Hello and welcome to MediaNama. In July 2025, the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways released the revised Motor Vehicle Aggregator Guidelines 2025. The notification followed the ban imposed on bike taxis in Karnataka, with gig worker unions claiming that the move endangered the livelihoods of over 1 lakh bike taxi drivers in the state. Moreover, in a bid to circumvent the suspension, aggregators like Uber and Rapido began ferrying users on bike parcels as couriers. Notably, while ordering the suspension, the High Court observed that the operation of bike taxis couldn't be permitted until the state government notified relevant guidelines under Section 93 of the Motor Vehicles Act 1998. In a separate development, the central government released the Motor Vehicle Aggregator Guidelines 2025, which paved the way for state governments to allow the use of non transport and privately registered motorcycles for passenger journeys. But what do these guidelines mean for ride hailing services? To begin, companies can apply for aggregator licenses for a fee of rupees 5 lakh. Besides this, aggregators would be charged rupees 25,000 each for renewal of a license and for noting a change in address. The license will be valid for a period of 5 years from its issue date, and only entities registered under the Companies Act 2013 or under the Limited Liability Partnership Act 2008 or an association of drivers under the Cooperative Societies Act 1912 can apply for such licenses. These companies should also comply with all applicable regulations like the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023, the Consumer Protection Act 2019, and the Information and Technology Act 2000 alongside the intermediary guidelines while applying for the license. Notably, the Act subjects aggregators to several conditions for the approval of a license. Firstly, aggregators should conduct an induction training program of at least 40 hours before onboarding drivers. This program should comprise both in person and virtual training sessions and should train drivers in multiple aspects like the use of the app, careful driving and traffic rules, familiarization with routes, and gender sensitivity, among others. The drivers should also be familiarized with the 2017 Motor Vehicles Driving Regulations, relevant provisions of the Motor Vehicle Act and Guideline, and first responder training for emergencies. Notably, aggregators should upload structural details of such sessions on a designated portal. Speaking of drivers, aggregators should not prohibit them from joining other ride hailing services. Next, aggregators should also insure a minimum amount of rupees 5 lakh as insurance for passengers and provide both riders and drivers with the option to rate their overall experience of the journey. Finally, they should also provide written notice about the commencement of services to a competent authority and update the same within 6 months of the date of the license approval, failing which the authority may cancel their license. The ride hailing service should also inform the authority 72 hours before the service launches and upload the notification on the designated portal of the competent authority. Besides driver onboarding, aggregators should ensure that drivers abide by certain conditions like having a valid driver's license and a bank account. Accordingly, drivers must undergo a medical examination, including an eye checkup by a medical institution, police verification, and a psychological analysis by the aggregator. They should also be free of any convictions for offenses like driving under the influence of substances or any cognizable offense under the Bharatiya Nagarik Suraksha Sanhita 2023. They should also maintain a digital record containing the documents of onboarded drivers that have been duly authenticated from the Sarthi portal. Coming to drivers' welfare, aggregators should adhere to the provisions under the Social Security Code 2020 and undertake the following compliance measures. They should provide a health insurance cover of not less than rupees 5 lakh and a term insurance of rupees 10 lakh per driver, which will be increased by 1 percentage point per year as notified by the central government. They should also conduct annual refresher training programs for drivers whose rating falls below the 5 percentile as compared to all the other drivers associated with the aggregator for the same period of time. Finally, ride hailing services should conduct an inquiry and take appropriate action against any driver within 3 days of a receipt of a complaint against the latter by a customer. Moving on to passengers, aggregators should install vehicle location and tracking devices in all carriers that should be linked to the Integrated Command and Control Center of the state government. To aid passenger safety, they must also ensure that drivers follow the route indicated in the app and signal the control room in case of any deviation. Similarly, they should comply with safety norms for passengers like children, women, and differently abled. Finally, aggregators should conduct regular checks of the onboarded drivers. Speaking of fare regulation, the state government shall notify the base fare for respective categories of motor vehicles. Aggregators can charge either 50% lower than the base fare or double the base fare as surge pricing. However, drivers should receive at least 80% of the applicable fare in case they use their own motor vehicle, and these payments should be settled no later than the time stipulated in the agreement between the driver and the aggregator. Alternatively, drivers who ferry passengers on aggregator owned vehicles are entitled to earn 60% of the applicable fare. Another major problem experienced by both commuters and drivers alike is the untimely cancellation of rides. To curb this, the guidelines levy a penalty of 10% of the fare, not exceeding rupees 100, on drivers if they cancel a booking after accepting it without providing a legitimate reason. Conversely, the same penalty is imposed on passengers who similarly cancel rides. Speaking of other provisions, the state government could direct aggregators to incrementally increase the percentage of electric, alternate fuel, or zero emission vehicles in their fleet, alongside stipulating an adequate number of Divyangjan friendly motor vehicles. Among other compliances, the center also directs several requirements for the maintenance of the website, app, and technology of the aggregators. Firstly, aggregators should provide the app in Hindi, English, and the official language of a particular state and must be easily accessible for Divyangjans. They should also ensure that a certain empaneled firm has conducted the cybersecurity check of the app. Secondly, the data stored in the app should be processed according to the provisions of the Digital Personal Data Protection Act 2023 and include other requirements for grievance redressal and driver profiles. Besides the other requirements, authorities can suspend the licenses of aggregators for a period extending up to 3 months on the following grounds. Number one, failure to ensure a passenger or driver safety. Number two, frequent occurrences of either unjustified imposition of dynamic pricing, non-compliance with guidelines, or disproportionate fare divisions. Number three, failure to comply with contractual obligations promised to drivers. And number four, financial irregularities, amongst others. In case the license of the aggregator has been suspended for 3 financial years, or if they had committed another violation under the Act, their license can be revoked or cancelled. Accordingly, the competent authority should issue a show cause notice to the aggregator asking them why their license should not be cancelled. Aggregators thereby have the opportunity to be heard, but must immediately stop all operations since their license has been cancelled. Notably, in case the aggregator is unsatisfied with the license cancellation or suspension, they can appeal to the appellate authority designated by the state government against the same. Later, the appellate authority should provide an opportunity for hearing to the aggregator and decide the appeal within 60 days of the filing. Overall, besides the duties of aggregators, the guidelines also lay down the powers of the state government. It notes that the government can call for any information or document it deems necessary from the aggregator. Further, the state government should facilitate the authentication of details of onboarded vehicles, drivers, and vehicle owners via the Vahan and Sathi portals. While these rules have been appreciated in part, gig worker unions like the Telangana Gig and Platform Workers Union, or the TGPWU, and the Indian Federation of App-Based Transport Workers, or IFAT, have criticized certain provisions. TGPW founder president Sheikh Salahuddin informed MediaNama that surge pricing of 2 or 3 times the base fare would plague drivers and customers alike while the app profits. Instead, Salahuddin demanded the following: a ban on surge pricing beyond reasonable limits, the end of illegal bike taxi operations, and the recognition of gig workers under labor laws. In a different vein, he also opined that the rupees 5 lakh license fee on aggregators could also be shouldered onto drivers through hidden costs and increased commissions. While the guidelines seem to be a step in the right direction, the grievances of gig workers raise concerns about a lack of stakeholder consultation. Moving forward, while the guidelines leave space for the development of state specific norms, it remains to be seen how efficiently states come up with region specific regulations substantiating these. Until then, the fates of bike taxi workers and aggregators hang in the lurch. Thank you for watching. For more tech policy updates, subscribe to MediaNama.